On to 2023, which is what we're doing today on the BWI Daily Edition. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. Penn State signed the class of 2022. That one's in the books officially. Like the late signing period is done, Ryan Snyder joining me today. So we're taking a look at 2023 because it never ends. Like, it's never over. Just move on to the next thing. How you doing, Ryan?
I like the new music. The intro.
We're 5 for 5 now on people saying, like, man, I like the new intro music.
That was my first time hearing it. I heard it, when we did it the other day. I didn't know you switched it. Actually, no, I listened to it the other day. What am I saying? But yeah, it never ends, man. So we are on to 2023, but really we've been on to 2023 for a year now. So
so we're talking about 2024 then. Forget the whole show we were going to do. Let's do 2024. I'm kidding.
We'll do that in the summertime. But yeah, Penn State's off to a good start. A lot of oh God, it's a great start. They're in great shape with a lot of players, coming off 3 pretty solid junior days, and of course a ton of guys have been on campus for all those games in the fall. But you got to lock them down, and that's what we will see with time. But there's a lot of good prospects out there. I think there's some positions that are going to be critically important, and we'll talk about them in this podcast. But I think our goal today is really just kind of go through positionally and talk about the top targets, and we'll take it from there. So where do you want to start? Quarterback, I assume, right?
We can start. So it's funny because normally I would say absolutely let's start a quarterback, with Penn State having 2 quarterbacks on the roster. Just like recruiting in any position, you're never done. But it does seem to have less emphasis than now that they got 2 in the books now from 2022. Where would you gauge the level of urgency at quarterback on a year-to-year basis and with 2023?
I mean, so you always have to get one.
Okay.
You can't have a year off at that position because it's the portal.
Right.
with only one guy starting, I mean, you're going to see outgoings almost every year, I feel like. Of course, we saw Taquan Roberson this year, and I don't know who's going to leave next year, but I think more often than not, you're going to see an outgoing every year at that position. So
I have a hunch that Sean Clifford is leaving after 2023,
That's a good point.
2022.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be one for sure leaving.
Yeah, and with Sean leaving, depending on how it all shakes out, that could maybe keep Vayu and Pribula and Aller all together, because they're going to fight it out then for the following year. Although who knows? 2022 season, we got a ways to go still. So let's see how it all shakes out. But you would think that with Clifford leaving, that gives everybody incentive to stay and then fight for it in 2023 then. But who knows, man? A long way to go until then.
Yeah. So who are the names to know at quarterback with that one? There's one roster spot in this class, correct? And who are the guys to know at this point?
Yeah, I'd be shocked if there was more than one quarterback in this class. And I mean, there's no doubt about it that Dante Moore from Martin Luther King is the top guy in this class. We have him at number 17 in the on-3 consensus. And, he's got offers from just about all the top programs you can think of. I mean, to me, it feels like Michigan has the lead there. And, now that Harbaugh is coming back, it's going to be hard for me to see them missing out on him. I just, all signs have really been kind of pointing there. But, he's got a ways to go to, a lot more visits to take. So I don't want to get too embedded into that thought. But right now, I definitely feel like Michigan's the favorite, and Notre Dame's very much in the mix there too. And same with Michigan State. So basically what I'm saying is I'd be surprised if he ends up here, especially coming off a year where you land such a good quarterback and Drew Aller, of course. And, guys look at that, especially at this position. They do try to find pockets where, previously recruited guys maybe aren't on their level or whatever it may be. So, to me, it's going to be hard to land Dante Moore. I think Jaden Rashada then out of California is the next guy you turn to, and he's been so quiet lately. It was weird because during the season he was somebody we were in regular contact with. He came for 2 visits, and it felt like okay, we're going to be able to really understand his recruitment. And then just over the last couple of months, he's really gone quiet, and it's been hard to get a feel for him. I know in the fall, Penn State sources were giving me the impression that Penn State and Ole Miss were probably his 2 top schools. And since then, he's added some other quality programs. So that'll be something I need to learn more on, really. And that'll be something I definitely dig on in February. The last thing I will say, though, is Penn State has been handing out more scholarship offers here just recently.
Right.
Which kind of the quarterback's not a position where you just throw offers out there. So to me, that would give me the impression that maybe they feel like they're fading a bit with Rashada. I think they know they have an uphill climb with Moore, because of Rashada being quiet and just maybe he's not opening up to them as much as he is not with us, but just offering a few more guys like J.J. Cole out of Iowa, Marcus Stokes out of Florida, that kind of gives me the impression that they need to expand their board. So that'll be something here to watch here in the coming weeks. I had a really good talk with Marcus Stokes the other day. He actually is coming off the incredible combine down in San Antonio, and now he's really starting to blow up. Penn State was the first Power 5 school to offer, but there's a lot of other schools in the mix here. So he'll be somebody to watch. And of course, Yurcich also went out to watch J.J. Cole throw earlier this year. I believe he scouted one of his games, he was in December. He went out to check up on him. So that was another player we knew he's interested in. But this board has to get figured out still. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, and it's always the place to start, but it did feel like the murkiest of, at least through our conversations, it hasn't really been one that there seems to be a crystallized even list. I think to your point of it's expanding now. I want to go back to Jim Harbaugh though, because we can't not talk about that. All the way into interviewing with the Vikings, then nope, I'm coming back to Michigan. There's a 1,000 different ways you could look at that particular story and how it affects the program, the university, et cetera, et cetera. How do you feel confident if you're a recruit that the head coach was interviewing with the NFL and was, by reports, agreed in principle, or at least was going to be the next Vikings head coach until suddenly he wasn't? Like, is there any trust that needs to be rebuilt there from recruits or players in the program?
You say the same thing about James Franklin?
But he didn't interview with anybody. He didn't actually. There was no report that he was interviewing with Southern California or LSU. Yeah. There were rumors, but he was legitimately the guy that was going to be the Vikings head coach, at least as far as the reporting that was done by On3 and the guys that we were reading. And then miraculously, later in the day, he's back at Michigan as the head coach.
Yeah, it is a little different. I agree. Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, I was just wrapping up my point. So,
but yeah, it is a little different. But I just think like we've had 3-4 years of Franklin rumors too, and I think that you add multiple years of that, it kind of, to me, it's kind of on the same playing field as 1 year of another coach interviewing. Now, yeah, I mean, I would assume that that those are conversations they're going to have, but. All signs have been pointing to Michigan, and our colleagues up there, they feel really good about it. And even our colleagues in Notre Dame, kind of say like, yeah, I think the Irish are in it, but Michigan's going to be hard to beat there. So you would think that would impact him, but I mean, this is college football. How many moves were made this year? 20-some,
Yeah.
It's just how it works. So. I don't know if you can ever get too embedded into just relationships with coaching staff. You got to find a school that's right for you.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, in the long run, it's par for the course. It just seems like it was such a unique situation where I don't remember too many times where a guy the reporting was in, like the story was written, he's gonna be the next coach, and then all of a sudden it flips back, and then you got to go back into that room. When Brian Kelly left, it was 4 minutes of video that we saw, and then he was out the door. You don't usually see reversals like this. So just a unique situation from the players on the team to the recruits and how everyone would view that. I find that particular conversation interesting because I don't know Jim Harbaugh's contract and the longevity of his time at Michigan from a contractual standpoint. So going down that road probably isn't super helpful, but it's just something I wanted to bring up because it felt weird. It just felt like a weird one of these situations where usually it's one or the other. It never comes back the other way.
He definitely wanted to go to the NFL. And I just feel like the Vikings said, no, we don't want you. Right?
Right.
I mean, at least not just from our college reporting, but, if you just look at national writers and since what they have kind of put out there, that it feels like he wanted it and they said no. So whatever. Welcome back to Big Ten, Jim.
So let's move on to Penn State things and talk about the running back situation. Penn State, another place where they got our Charles Power, our recruiting and ranking director, had them with the best running back class in the nation for 2022. You're never done. Going back to 2023, who are the guys that are going to be the next crop in, or at least the targets at this point?
So this is another one where I feel like this board is going to expand with time. I think Treyaun Webb from Trinity Christian down in Florida, who of course was teammates with Cam Miller this past year. I think he'll be. There seems to be some momentum growing with him. At one point back in October, November, the talk was, Penn State's building a good relationship with Mark Fletcher, who's from American Heritage down in the Miami region. But that seems to have cooled a little bit. I'm not. I just feel like some other schools are probably more so emerging with Fletcher right now. So Webb's the guy I have circled. They're also in the mix with Richard Young from Lehigh Acres, another Florida guy. But until he visits, it's hard for me to really kind of take him serious. And then Dalen Smothers, who's from, I believe, the Charlotte region. He's another guy who's been on campus already. But Webb seems to be the one that, there seems to be a momentum behind. He's been up here before. He has that close connection with Cam Miller. But, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think this board was going to expand with time. There's not a ton of guys in the region that Penn State's really high on. This is one of those positions where they have to recruit nationally this year.
Okay.
And when that's the case, they're not Ohio State. They're not Clemson. They're not Alabama. They can't just pluck these guys as regularly as they would like, So when you have to go outside your region, you usually it's one of those positions that drags out for a bit, and the board keeps expanding with more and more offers going out. I mean, there is, in Harrisburg, Bishop McDevitt running back Marquise Williams. He's a good player, but he's a little small, and I think Penn State has some concerns with that at 5'9". We have him at 5'9", 165, 170-ish. I think they definitely want a bigger back, and I think that's why they're not really going all out for Marquise. So if you look at the rest of the board, man, it's, Florida, North Carolina, Texas, Florida again. Just my point is that, all these guys are really from outside the region. So we'll see with more visits with time. But out of those four guys I mentioned, Webb seems to make the most sense at the moment. But he's also committed to 2 schools already and decommitted twice, and just that one's going to take some time.
How does JaJuan Seider being so good in the state of Florida factor into this? And I'm trying to not be hyperbolic here, but Florida is very firm where Penn State has taken several running backs out of the state over the last couple of years. So is this more about time or lack of quality prospects when you really dig down into it between the two?
He's good in South Florida. I mean, I guess that's not exactly true. He's gotten Kevon Lee and Keziah Holmes, and they were in South Florida. But I would say, I mean, what do you mean by quality prospects? Like, there's good quality prospects down there, but they have offers from everywhere.
Right. Right.
It's more so just that there haven't been too many guys who I think like truly have Penn State in their top 3, and they want to decide anytime soon. And then they have to take more visits still too. I mean, that's the one thing with these 2023 guys is, some of them got out, but there's a lot of guys still who really haven't been able to explore. They've only been able to visit their regional schools. Now, Webb did make it up here, and Fletcher did drive up or flew up here for the Michigan game. But I think it's just going to take time, and that's the main thing. This is another board that, it wouldn't surprise me if none of those 4 guys end up here at Penn State.
Right.
I'll put it that way.
One place that let's have some clarity. One place that I think is pretty clear, or that we've had talks about these players specifically, would be receiver. Just going right down the roster. Yep. Ronnie Gallagher is the headliner of this group, but this is a group that I think there's more regionality, and there's a couple of prospects in the area, right, that are high on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gallagher's definitely 1A, or maybe just one all by himself. I mean, I think Noah Rogers out of North Carolina is an awesome prospect too that Penn State's incredibly high on, and I have him kind of right up there with Rodney as far as like their top 2 guys. Now there are some other guys who are truly national prospects that if they come and visit, they'll be right up there too. But right now, I would circle those guys. I would also put a Johnny Shakir from Penn Saucon in that mix. I don't know if he's quite as high as those 2 are, but he's been on campus enough, showed enough interest, and they have enough information on that he makes a lot of sense. But there's a lot of other guys here. Of course, we talk about Kenny Johnson a lot out of Dallastown. I think Kenny comes up here and camps in the summertime, runs well, and has a good workout, they'll absolutely take him. And I think they've already offered. There's a lot of interest. I just feel like they just need to see. I really think they just want to see him run. I really believe that's what it is. And if he were to do that, I have no doubts that they would probably take him. So he's another guy. Of course, Anthony Brown, who's currently committed to Minnesota. He was just up here for Junior Day, so there's some good interest there. Bryson Rogers out of I believe it's Zephyr Hills in Florida. He's been up here for a visit already. He's got a lot of good offers though, and his board just kind of keeps, or his list, excuse me, just kind of keeps expanding. Christian Hamilton's another guy out of North Carolina, but this is definitely a get Rodney Gallagher on board. Probably take a Johnny Shakir again out of New Jersey, and then you can probably take another one. I think right now three wide receivers makes the most sense.
And 4 tight ends, right? At one point, it seemed like Penn State was going to have about 6 or 7 tight ends. We'll get into some of the details and nuance there when we get to Matthias Barnwell. But Penn State really got, it feels like they got their pick of the litter. They got what they wanted at this position because the room's full at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think Joey and Neo are definitely the guys I have circled as tight ends right now. And Neo Avery can absolutely play defensive end, and that may happen with time. But right now, he's coming in here fully expecting to play tight end. Penn State's fine with that. I mean, Neo Avery, I thought, was their number 1 tight end target the whole time. And then he breaks his hand, starts playing defensive end. James Franklin attends one of those games where he's playing defensive end, and that's where that whole talk kind of started. But
because he was really good at it. Holy cow, was he good at it?
I think he had 6 tackles or 6 sacks in like one game or something like that. It was some really good stats. So that'll be one that we'll see what happens with time. It wouldn't surprise me if he got moved over there. But he and Joey are definitely coming in to play tight end, and I kind of talked about it already. But I think Matthias is going to end up at defensive end or defensive tackle, and we'll talk about that here in a minute.
So when it comes to, just quickly on Neo Avery, I know you mentioned the defensive end. What do you think it's still strong lean to tight end, but the option is there. Do you think a strong senior season at defensive end, and in T-Frank's film room, one of the things I thought, either way you need to get a little bigger and stronger, but especially for defensive end, if he blossoms on the other side of the ball, is that door open to then reopening the tight end room?
I think the door will be open regardless of what happens. Or you mean like adding another tight end? Excuse me, I'm sorry. Probably not. I would just say this, like, I think that'll be so far down the road though that they'll have so many other guys committed that they'll just have bigger needs. Now don't get me wrong. If something Joey decommitted, which I don't see that happening, but I just if we project it out to next October, I'd be shocked if this class isn't 70% full by then. And then once you get to that stage, you start saying, okay, well, we only got one wide receiver committed or something like that, and
your holes will become obvious at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So to me, that would surprise me. I think those will be your 2 tight ends. Maybe if somebody decommitted, something would change, but I think that'll be it.
So offensive line is next, and I know that we've talked a lot about tackles versus interior offensive line. Penn State already has 3 committed to the class, and Anthony Donko has that guard tackle possibility. What's left out there, and what is Penn State targeting when they have those 3 linemen they have already?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely pretty tackle heavy, their board remaining. Now I'm going to include Javen Williams in that, although I think Javen Williams is a guard. Actually, let me clarify.
I would agree.
A guard. And so Javen Williams, it makes the most sense for adding an interior guy. And then after that, I mean, I feel like they really have to focus on tackle. So Samson Okunlola, of course, he was just up for a Junior Day not that long ago. Chase Basantis has, showing signs that he's interested in Penn State, but I just kind of hear mixed things. Like, to me, when that's the case at this stage, I don't get a great feeling there. And then with Luke Montgomery, I think Luke likes Penn State a lot, but I think he has some other schools that are a little ahead of Penn State right now. So when I focus on that tackle board, it remains Evan Link, Samson Okunlola. Those are the 2, and Evan Link especially. I feel like Evan Link is someone Penn State has to land. He just went to Stanford. I have to get in touch with him still. I was waiting to get past National Signing Day to check in with him on that Stanford visit. So we'll do that here in the coming week. But yeah, Evan feels like an absolute must-land prospect out of DC, Gonzaga. He's a true tackle, somebody Penn State has to land. If they can land him and they can land Javen Williams, and I do think Penn State will land Javen Williams. I mean, a lot of talk that he's been leaning this way. People who close to him out there in the Reading area have kind of hinted that he's leading Penn State. When the commitment will come, I'm not exactly sure, but he's a guy I think we'll be putting in a crystal ball here for pretty soon, to be honest. And then put it this way, though, if they get Link and they get Williams, I do think they would still add Okunlola, and that would get the class all the way up to 6.
It's 6, yeah.
Five right now is kind of what I'm projecting, but the point here is that they're just going to load up. I think that's remains an incredibly important position, and they have no problem taking a scholarship or two from another spot if they can get quality guys at the end. And Samson Okunlola would be a quality guy at the end.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Of a guy like that, you're going to make an exception for, and that's what they were trying to do in the class of 22 as well with Emil Wagner and some of those guys. Of they got the guys in the class they wanted, and they got Drew Shelton, and they secured those guys, and then all out for those prospects that are the ones they really want that are making the decision at the end. So makes sense to keep that sort of process going. To include the class, just to round out our evaluation here, Alex Birchmeyer, a high 4-star, if he was a tackle, would be, I think, an easy 5-star candidate at this point, is in the class. And then, of course, Josh Miller, the other guy with Anthony Donko, already committed. So a strong group already, could be a very strong unit with some of the guys that are interested in Penn State. Reality here, as far as who they could get in this class, what do you think that the end result might be with the names we mentioned?
Link. You have to land Link. Get Link, and it makes things a lot easier. Because if you miss on Link, then I think you're going to have to probably offer more tackles, and it gets a little trickier out there. So if they can get Link, I think it makes they'll feel a lot better about the situation, because he's leaning this way. He's a quality prospect, but academics are incredibly important too, and Stanford is. No one can argue about Stanford's academics. So get Link, get Javen Williams, which, I mean, right now I think is definitely realistic. And then, Okunlola, if it's anything his brother's recruitment, he's going to take his time. And that's somebody you can add down the road. You can pluck a scholarship from defensive back or something like that to take him. I'm
going to ignore the obvious jokes about Legend of Zelda because I never played the game. So let's move on to defensive end. This is a jam-packed, star-studded group that Penn State has, that the list of names that we have here. So take us through it. Let's break it down and look at the guys from top to bottom, most reasonable, most feel best about, or where do you want to start with this list that includes some of the top players in the nation?
Yeah, I mean, of course, Nicholas Harbor is someone we have to talk about, right? Probably one of the best athletes, not in this class, but really in recent classes combined. I mean, I can't think of too many guys in 2022, 2021, 2020 that I would put above him as far as a pure freak of an athlete. But, of course, with his track prowess and the opportunities that he has there to be a truly world-class sprinter, man, it's really hard for me to not see him taking some of those Southern schools who just have incredible track programs seriously. So that's something we'll find out with time. Nicholas did not make it up to Penn State for the junior day. His team got invited to I forget the indoor meet's name, but big meet. It was a Melrose game, maybe, I believe. Melrose meet up in New York City. They got a late invite to that, and he ended up going to that track meet the other week and performed pretty well, I believe. And he's actually running against world-class sprinters. I don't believe it was at a high school level. But anyway, David Ojabe, of course, from St. John's College High. Desmond Umazulu was just up here. Some other guys, I think Mason Robinson is someone that Penn State would take out of McDonough. I'm curious to see what happens with Cam Lenhart. A couple months ago, he was firmly leaning this way, and now things have kind of cooled a little bit. He just went out to Michigan State, and just kind of trying to get a better feel for where he's at on Penn State's board at the moment, because a couple of months ago, it definitely felt like he was somebody who's going to be part of this class, and now I'm just kind of getting more so the impression that Penn State's leaning towards a couple other guys. So that'll be something to watch. Dylan Gooden is an interesting player. He's at good counsel along with Neo Avery. I mean, physically, he's a great looking prospect. I just was kind of told mixed things on how his season went, just some ups and downs. And that's given Penn State and some other schools a reason to, I don't want to say pause, as if they wouldn't ever take him, but, maybe to do a little bit more research, ask him to camp. Of course, he camped actually with Penn State this past summer too. So they do have good testing numbers on him and things like that. But right now, this is a board that it's hard for me to really pinpoint who's absolutely going to end up at Penn State. I think Mason Robinson, if Penn State wants him, he will end up here. And I think
Mhm.
he's a good enough player to end up here, personally. David Ojabe, too, out of St. John's College High. He's visited enough that makes me think he's a realistic prospect. And right now, I would do 2 or 3 defensive ends. I would think that if they could land Mason, maybe land a Jabe, then you hold out then for one of the freak guys that you could go for later in the cycle. But those are the guys who stand out the most to me at the moment. Actually, I will add Michael Kilbane too, from
Yeah.
St. Edward out of Ohio. He just visited a couple weeks ago. Great kid too. Penn State was one of the first big schools to offer him, and there seems to be some momentum there too. Deshaun Womack. I never mentioned St. Francis kids because Penn State struggles so much with St. Francis kids, but
Right.
Deshaun Womack was just up here too. I believe he has ties to Pittsburgh too, so there might be some ins that Terry Smith has with them. But until Penn State lands a St. Francis prospect, man, it's hard for me to seriously consider those guys. So we'll see. I didn't mention Joseph Mpui too, who's a really raw prospect. I forget what country he's out of in Africa. I want to say Ghana, but I don't believe that's it. But he came over here to the States not that long ago and just played his first year of football. And physically, man, there's a lot to love there. Penn State is serious about him. He's from Archbishop Carroll, which is the same school as Nicholas Harbor. I mean, I've talked to people about Mpui, who people think that Mpui is actually, I don't want to say better than Nick Harbor, but like technically in some ways he's a better defensive end, just because Nick Harbor's kind of a freak athlete.
Yeah.
But Mpui showed some things down the as the season progressed where he was just getting better with his hands and technically.
Well, Harbor is a very linear sort of player. Like if you're a great sprinter, you're obviously very upright, very linear, and there is a lot of that in his game. So I can imagine guys that have a little more bend or that use a little bit more football-like skills other than just pure speed, strength, and violence is what you see in Harbor. And I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but his game is built on violence and shock and speed, and if you were using the nuances, I can see how that might be something part of that conversation. One guy that I was expecting but not expecting on the list was Jason Moore, because he's got a conversation about whether he's an end or a tackle. So how does he fit into that group, and how does he fit into Penn State's long-term projection at defensive tackle, which we can get into next?
I was going to say, I have him as a defensive tackle. He could probably play both, but to me, I just see him continuing to grow. And when I watched him against Ematep this past year, I mean, just his strength is, real power rushing and things of that sort. And, right now we have him at 6'6", 255. And, you have to think that he could get up to 280 pretty easily. I mean, he's already really well physically built, and but there's definitely still room that he can grow too. I mean, he's been playing basketball his whole life. This is the first year he hasn't played basketball. So if you add in, the fact that he's going to be training in the weight room for the first time this whole entire offseason, I mean, you would think that he's able to add some great weight there. But
incredible length, right? I have not seen as much of Jason Moore, but we're talking about a guy who moves the interior length and would be a sort of a lean 300, right? Is what it sounds like.
Yeah. I wish I had a reach number on him. I don't have an exact number for what his arm length is or anything like that. But yeah, I mean he's a true 6'6". I think we have it like 6'5" and 6'5.5", 6'5 and 3/4. I have him marked as 6'6". I mean he's going to reach 6'6" here soon. Don't worry about it. He's still growing. So usually those guys I when they're 6'5", 6'5.5", and still growing, I'll mark them up a little bit because that's only coming with time. But yeah, he's in my opinion, Penn State's number one defensive tackle target. And I expect Matthias Barnwell to be at this position too. This is there's been a lot of talk about him playing defensive line. Some people have said, he wants to kind of be like a defensive end, like a power defensive end. But to me, like, dude, he's going to grow. He's going to continue growing. He's already 6'7" or whatever it is. So I see him as a defensive tackle
with great pad level. I mean, I don't want to stress. I can't stress this enough. Of like tall but with a low profile. And if Penn State got two of those players in the same class, like this is what we're talking about when it comes to making a difference in recruiting and making a difference on the defensive line and genuine defensive tackles that make a difference in games. That's what you can have with that sort of length and flexibility. Speaking of flexibility, how much is it a benefit or how well positioned does it make Penn State having Barnwell already on their committed roster?
Yeah, it certainly helps, right? I mean, here's what I'm curious to, because for the longest time, I had 2 defensive tackles for Penn State, and then this is where Barnwell's at now. So does that change it to 3 now? And I think when you look at their board, yeah, I think they could definitely take 3 because if you can add Jason Moore, like I don't see them stopping there. I mean, because look at their board right now. They have Derek LeBlanc and John Walker, who are both top 150 defensive tackle prospects who came all the way up here from Florida recently. So there's a serious interest there. Joel Starling's decommitted from Michigan. I mean, I don't know when he's going to visit. I mean, but they've been talking to him long enough that I do think it will come. And then I haven't even mentioned Will Norman yet. And Will Norman is originally from, I believe, Camden. He plays at IMG Academy now. I mean, I thought for a little while that Norman was leaning towards Penn State. Not that I was expecting a commitment. I don't want to get too ahead of myself there with that because I can see that dragging out for a little while. But and then I hadn't even mentioned Sadir Mitchell and Justin Benton too. I think Justin Benton is somebody we need to be talking about more. I mean, Penn State sources seem to be really speaking highly of him behind the scenes. We have him as a 4-star in the On3 consensus from Covington, Georgia. He was originally at IMG Academy, and now he's gone back to play at home here for his senior season. But there's some good ties with some of those IMG guys that Penn State's in with, and there's a lot of people behind the scenes talking about Benton as somebody that they can realistically get. So that board's deep, man. And I used to think, they'll be happy with 2. But man, if they can land more, they already have Barnwell there. I don't see how they can turn many of those guys away.
And this is one of those reasons I think just having Matthias Barnwell on your team is so helpful because he could play tackle as well. And I know that that's not what he wants to do, but like his ability and his versatility helps you in a lot of ways building your class because you can see everywhere that he could play. So having that many defensive tackles and having him already on the roster, it seems like it's a great sign for Penn State. If you were to put an optimism chart there, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, well, the way we should consider Barnwell is just as an athlete, because there's always like those 1 or 2 athlete guys who I kind of, that's the scholarship that I put them under. Because Penn State does generally kind of save a scholarship or 2 is, we're going to put this guy wherever, So that's really, we don't normally use those. We don't normally, for guys his size.
Yeah, for anyone over 260.
Yeah, that's not usually how we look at those. They're usually more so speedy wide receivers that could, maybe help in other ways. But yeah, but that's how you should really look at Barnwell because there's a lot of ways that they could use him. And because of that, that's why I can see this defensive tackle group, which I originally had projected for 2, growing to maybe 3. And dude, I mean, honestly, even 4 wouldn't surprise me at this point if you include Barnwell as a tackle.
So you could have 6. You could have 6 linemen and 4 tackles, and then Penn State fans will be super happy about this class because it fills all of their needs, desires, and wants. Another place that Penn State seems to be in a great position, and that'd be linebacker with a couple of in-state guys and some guys that seem very high on the program, at least from a public social media standpoint. Yeah. Take us through this list, which has I know guys that I'm pretty high on, and I think that you probably are pretty high on as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've been calling Tamir Robinson Penn State's top linebacker prospect for a while now, and there's definitely some thought that he could grow into an end. I would be curious to see how he comes back from this injury.
Don't they all? And not to cut you off, but like we're having the same conversation about Abdul Carter. They could all be defensive ends when they're big and
Abdul
fast.
Carter's 235 though. I mean, Tamir Robinson's 210. Tamir Robinson was just playing safety for a good portion of his high school career. I mean, I believe he was playing predominantly safety this past year. So we'll see. I mean, I know a couple colleagues of mine at 247 think end there. When I talk to Penn State people, though, they're still pretty adamant that linebacker is where they're recruiting us. So that's what I'm going with for now. But I do know. I mean, I believe 247 has him as an end now. I believe that's what they're listing him as. So we'll see what happens. I mean, Charles Power and I have talked about it a little bit. And, we still feel like linebacker is the best place to list him. But I wouldn't be surprised if that. If he continues to grow or if they see some changes with, just how he moves after this injury, that things change a little bit there. So that's something to keep in mind. But no doubt about in my mind is that Tony Rojas, Phil Picciotti, and Grant Tucker are all very high on Penn State's board. Picciotti, of course, out of Penridge, somebody I went and saw. I have no doubts that he's, among their top 3. And then Tony Rojas as well, who I need to get changed. We have him as a wide receiver still. I need to get him changed to linebacker. Every time we talk about him on this podcast, it reminds me I need to get that done. But yeah, I mean, he's a true linebacker prospect for them. came up to camp, had an awesome camp. I've told you guys the numbers 1,000 times now. 4.5 40, 4.4 shuttle. I mean, ran really well. Penn State has a lot of excitement about what Tony Rojas can bring, and he's coming off a pretty good season too. So I've had those three guys. Robinson, Rojas, Picciotti as their top guys. I really should probably include Grant Tucker in that as well, out of North Carolina. But there's a lot of guys. I mean, this is a deep board this year. We didn't even mention Desai Trotter, Jordan Hall out of IMG Academy. D. Creighton just came up here from Georgia the other week. So there's a lot of guys here. They're still keeping an eye on so much. Bridgman from Archbishop Wood. I mean, there's a lot of guys here, and I have no doubts that Penn State's going to get a good haul at linebacker just because of just how many times they've had guys visit and who's showing interest, who's real about Penn State. I mean, out of those top four guys, Robinson, Rojas, Picciotti, Tucker, I'm very close to logging a pick for Rojas. Picciotti, of course, I think he needs to get to know Manny Diaz a little bit more. I think he may be one guy where losing Brent Pry kind of does hurt a little bit hurt State a little bit with, but not that I'm writing him off yet. I know Notre Dame's a serious contender there, but I think if he gets around Manny more, they'll be pretty good. But Robinson, Rojas, they both feel very realistic to me. I can put in picks for them tomorrow and feel confident.
So 4 linebackers, right?
We're 3. So my original projection was 2 to 3.
Yeah.
I think 3 just because it's going to be hard to turn guys around. But, now I'm talking about 4 defensive tackles and 6 offensive linemen.
It's a 30-man class.
Yeah. Unless we see a massive, amount of departures here in the spring. I don't know. I mean, right now I've been thinking this class would be like 22, 23. It's hard to see quite – that reached in 25, but it won't be a small class either. It won't be like an 18-person class or anything like that. So only time will tell. And of course, we got to figure out what happens in the portal. So this is fun, man. This game is it's incredibly difficult, but I can just throw numbers out there and it doesn't matter because they're all going to change in 2 months anyway. So.
Yeah, once we see a couple more commitments, then the math gets a little more firm, but it also is going to be something that we're going to be updating continually. So another spot that I know you and I have talked about a good bit is the cornerback position. Lamont Payne already in on the committed roster. Who are the guys here, and what's the number we're looking at as far as players at corner? And alternately, do you see this as defensive backs or corners and safeties?
Defensive backs. I mean, I always say 2 or 3 for each. It feels like every year I always say 2 or 3 corners, 2 or 3 safeties, and they kind of – they take so many guys who have the length, to play corner if they can, but maybe they don't move as well, so they can go to safety. I mean, usually every year it feels like it's like 4 defensive backs, and like one of them's like a true safety or a true corner. But right now for corner, I'm looking at, of course, Payne's already committed. Amari Snowden out of Detroit is a player who's really he went down to Miami, had a great 7-on-7 down there a couple weeks ago. Be curious to see how many more offers he keeps picking up. But he's already been on campus. Really spoke highly of Penn State. I think they'll be in the mix there. And Musa Kane, too, out of Blair Academy. He's another guy who he has close ties with Anthony Poindexter. He could play, and he's the perfect example. I mean, he could play corner or safety. I have him more so as a corner right now because when I look at their safety board, I think it's a little deeper than what we have at corner.
He's got 2 great ones in this class, so it makes sense.
Yeah. So Damari Brown too, out of Florida is a guy I'm keeping an eye on. Damon Fagan too. They were both from American Heritage, but we'll see. I mean, they were on campus for a visit, but it's not going to be easy to land those American Heritage guys. So right now, Snowden, Kane, and then you add in Payne. I mean, that would be 3. I think both. I think Kane's definitely realistic, and let's see how Snowden progresses here.
So let's roll right into the safeties then. Who are the guys? Are there any guys that have versatility the other way that might be considered that are more safeties than corners? And who's the names in this group?
Yeah, Janelle Aguero is an interesting guy. I mean, right now I don't see him ending up here, but he was at IMG. He moved back up to the New England area. I forget which school he's at. I apologize, but there's been talk that he's talking to Penn State more now. He came back, but really I still see him ending up down south. I think their top safety prospect is definitely Cam Selden out of Virginia. He's from a small school in Virginia. Not a guy who's talked a whole lot, but I just know when I speak with Penn State people, they absolutely rave about him. And so right now I kind of have him as their number one target there. We have him at 6'2", 210. He's from Northumberland in Heathville, Virginia, which I believe is like out kind of east of Richmond. It's kind of a small area. There's not a lot of talent that comes out of there, but he's the real deal. We have him as number 78 in the on-3 consensus. Ramir Stewart, of course, from Ematap's very much in the mix, and then Dakari Nelson too. He came up. Dakari came all the way up here from Selma, Alabama, I believe it was. He drove all the way up here from Selma, Alabama to T-Frank to watch the Rutgers game. To watch the Rutgers game. He's
serious about wanting to see Penn State.
He came with a couple younger siblings, like a Pat Carr family, to make that trip to watch the Rutgers game. Like, dude, salute! Like, I would never have done
fun
that.
too.
Yeah,
that's fun to make it like a family road trip too. That's cool.
That's a hell of a family road trip to watch. What was it, like 20 points in that game? But you got to watch the Christian Veilleux show. So anyway, I mean, obviously he's a guy from down south. I'll be curious to see how that progresses. I think Khalil Ali is somebody they want to see run. He's also from Pennsauken, teammates with Ajani Sakir. So we'll see how that goes. And we'll see. Yeah, I mean, TJ Metcalf too. Also, he just came up for junior day. He's from Birmingham, Alabama. Christian Garrett from St. Francis, another St. Francis guy who
does Metcalf have safety or corner receiver and safety, or is he just a safety?
Yeah, I mean, everything I've been told is safety.
Okay.
If he's somebody I could see in a camp and, get a little better look at, I could give you a better answer there. But right now, I kind of have those guys circled. Thomas Williams, too, out of South Carolina. I think he's more of a corner. We have him as a safety, but he's somebody to keep an eye on down the road. Zabari Sandy, too. That's my point, is I do feel like the safety board is a little bit deeper as far as potential targets. But Cam Seldon is absolutely the top guy there with Ramir Stewart, Dakari Nelson. Those are kind of the other ones I'm really focused on.
I tend to get into the weeds, and I'm looking at sub packages, and Daquan Hardy has been great for Penn State, and he is going to be leaving the program at some point. Is slot corner, that has been valuable for them? Is that a part of the picture, do you think? And guys that have that versatility, is there anybody that might take precedence because of that?
Good question. I mean, off the top of my head right now, no, there's nobody I'm really circled for that. I think they're more so like get you on campus. Let's get you, going against Parker Washington, and that'll give us a better feel for it. Right off the top of my head, there's not too many guys. I mean, they're always still trying to look for that length, and obviously that's not really conducive to that nickel spot. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of more like just get it on campus, and if you don't get burnt by Parker Washington or KJ Hamler or John Dotson, then we're interested.
Yeah, plus you can play anybody you want at that 11th spot. You can play a linebacker, you can play another safety, you can play a third corner. So it's not as much like you need. It's just been an interesting wrinkle, and this stuff progresses over time with the players available, that it's been very good on third down to have him come on the football field. But, they've done it a bunch of different ways. Last question then is there a position or a player that you think sticks out most as a must-get or a must-succeed at?
Ooh, a must-get. I mean, I'll go back to Evan Link because of the tackle spot, right? I mean, I do feel like he's incredibly important. Cam Seldon, too, I just talked about him. I mean, he's someone we're really probably not talking about enough just because he doesn't open up a whole lot, and he's somebody I'm really trying to get an interview with. I'm finally communicating with him a little bit, which was something I struggled with for a while. So he's somebody I hope to get some good info on here soon. I mean, Tony Rojas, Jason Moore. I mean, of course, Nicholas Harbor. I mean, you can look at each spot and say, man, this is a guy they have to land.
Yeah.
I would say, Evan Link would probably be my first guy to circle. And then maybe Jason Moore, just because those, tackle and defensive tackle. Show me two more spots that are more crucial than those two when it comes to landing elite talent.
Yep.
We've talked about that before.
That's who I was going to mention, Jason Moore, or, if it could be like out of left field, Luke Montgomery as an elite tackle to get somebody like that. But a realistic thing and something that definitely defines a class or defines a position. They were very close with Brian Breesy a couple years ago at that 3 technique or that defensive tackle position. So I absolutely agree that would be who I would go with as well.
And landing Jason Moore too. Like, he's a potential 5-star.
Yeah.
And Birchmeier, even though he's an interior guy, I think he's special, and I do believe he has 5-star potential. We've talked about this before about how tackles usually get the nod for 5-star over interior guys. But if you were to land Jason and you were to land Alex, that gives you 2 potential 5-star guys. And if
Yep.
I know rankings only mean so much, and they mean nothing, of course, when they get here in the grand scheme of things. But if you're looking for another top 10 class, Penn State has to land probably 2 5-star players. And right now, those two make the most sense.
Awesome talk. This was a ton of fun. I have an idea. Let's do it 1 week from now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, hopefully. I'm not sick. If you guys haven't noticed, I'm like not feeling well at all right now. So I'm happy we made it through this one. But yeah,
you're a trooper. Soldiering through. I appreciate it. I genuinely appreciate it more than you know. This is the last BWI Daily Edition of the week. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube. I'm your host, Thomas Frank Carr. We'll talk to you next week.